Parents always put their phones on Do Not Disturb overnight. One night I was in a car accident, scared and badly hurt. I tried calling, but their phone sent me straight to voicemail. That night changed everything between us. Growing up, my parents used to be these amazing parents who were very attentive and caring to me and my siblings. Except with an exception, that the two of them would always have their phones on Do Not Disturb from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And they told us it's because they value their free time and sleep, and don't want to be disturbed during the night. Which was okay, at first, until I was stuck in a situation where I really needed their help. Around 3 years ago, when I was 18, I got this job as a server where I would work until 1 a.m. And I was expected to drive myself home. However, one day, I got into a car accident after work and got pretty badly injured. To the point that I'll never fully recover to this day, as I now have life-lasting injuries and is considered as disabled. And I was hoping that, just this once, my parents would answer me. Because I was scared, and wanted someone close to me to be there for me. But, as expected, it automatically went into voicemail and they never picked up. And that night, I also called other family members to ask them to contact my family or to come with me. And the only ones who was willing to come by to see me immediately was my grandparents, and they also tried to call my parents as well. But, as expected, they couldn't reach them either. So, it wasn't until around the next day at 7 a.m. where my parents finally heard what happened to me. But by then, I already felt like it was too late because they wouldn't respond after so long. And I was always out of surgery and awake by the time my parents finally came to the hospital, so I never felt like I really got their support because I already did with my grandparents who was there for me from the start. And ever since then, I couldn't think about my parents as amazing anymore, and I couldn't forgive them for making me feel abandoned. Even if I knew that they would never pick up their phone in the middle of the night, because they told me so beforehand. And ever since then, I was distant and refused to let them do anything with me, like taking me to physical therapy or my doctor's appointment. And I only wanted my grandparents' help. And within the last month, after recovering enough to finally be able to go find another job that accommodated my disabilities and making enough money, I finally moved out of my parents' house and went NC with them. And my parents and grandparents seem to have an issue with that because they are telling me that I'm being too harsh. Especially since my parents profusely apologize and promise to keep their phones available at all times. And I know they have kept their promise to this day, since I know from my siblings that they can call them in the middle of the night, and my parents would now answer the phone, even if it's past 10 p.m. However, that one event is something I feel like I can never forgive them for. And while I feel bad for making my grandparents sad for not wanting to forgive my parents, I can't bring myself to do so after they made me feel so abandoned. What do you think? Ida? Edit. Wow, I did not expect this post to blow up in the way that it did. But I do know that some of you have some questions that I wished I realized to answer sooner, which probably sounds ironic considering I should have been looking over my Reddit post. To answer the questions relating to what my grandparents didn't just go to my parents' house directly, it was because they felt like they needed to stay in the hospital for me throughout the whole 6 hours my parents couldn't be there for me. When it came to my injuries, I was in a serious enough condition where I wasn't completely conscious enough as in going in and out of consciousness to make decisions on my own. So my grandparents had to be the one to directly talk to the medical staff on my behalf during the times that I couldn't. And about why I couldn't just call my siblings, or why no one bothered to call them, it was because my siblings were too young to be contacted. I won't explain the complications of my family life, but I am the oldest of 4, but I have a rather big age gap from me and my sibling who is the second oldest, which is an 8-year gap. Which meant that, by the time this happened, my siblings were about 10 years old when this happened. And the other 2 were 5 years and one that was barely 1 year old, 11 months, to be exact. And I don't think that anyone would want to call a 10-year-old about begging them for their parents to get to the hospital, because their oldest sibling is dying in a hospital. It would have been too traumatizing for a young child like them to hear that. I hope these answered your questions, but feel free to ask more if you like.